So good afternoon, everybody. I'm Julia McKelgan, and I'm really honored to be moderating today's discussion about women in boards. And I'd like to thank you all for joining us. It should be a very impactful and inspiring conversation. So before we begin, I'd like to thank the CSPG for allowing us to host this event and providing a platform to use. And if you aren't a member of the CSPG, please do check out their website and consider joining and becoming part of our geoscience community. Secondly, I'd also like to thank GeoWomen for organizing this event. So GeoWomen supports the 3 founding pillars of recruitment, retention, and recognition. And GeoWomen's primary goal is to retain women in the geoscience community and in the geoscience field, which is, and so a significant component of that is retention is building and advancing careers. So GeoWomen is always looking for opportunities to provide those connections and resources to enable women to advance their careers. And today we're so happy to partner with Board Ready Women. Board Ready Women has been supporting women and focusing on women's careers, board career journeys. And we do encourage you to register with Board Ready Women to take advantage of their network, their board postings, their guidance and advice through many of their events that they hold throughout the year. Before I'd like to introduce you to Heather Culbert and Jennifer Corey, I would like to take a minute to acknowledge that we are presenting from the traditional territories of the Blackfoot Confederacy, which includes the Siksika, the Piikani, the Kainai, and the Stoney Nakoda, which includes the Chiniki, the Bearspaw, the Wesley Nations, as well as the Tsuut'ina. Southern Alberta is also home to the Métis Nation of Alberta, Region 3, and Calgary is located where the Bow River and the Elbow River meet. This site has long been known by the Blackfoot, the Nakota, and the Tsuut'ina, and is the birthplace of the city of Calgary. And as participants of the call today, we acknowledge that we have an ongoing responsibility to protect and honor the life within each of these traditional lands, and we are called upon to uphold the responsibilities outlined in the treaties. So with that, I'd like to introduce you to, I'm just going to stop sharing my screen here, and I'd like to introduce you to Heather and Jennifer. So Heather is joining us today and has over 27 years of oil and gas experience and has held many senior positions, and was formerly the Senior Vice President of Corporate Services at Enerplus. Heather now serves on the board of the Export Development of Canada as Vice Chair and chairs the HR Committee. She's also been appointed to the board of the Fraser Institute and is a board member at Whitecap Resources. Heather also chairs the United Way World Leadership Council and is a member of She Leads Economic Council of Alberta, and is a past chair of the Alberta Research and Innovation Advisory Council. Heather also recently completed 2 terms as a chair of the Southern Alberta Institute of Technology and has been an active volunteer and philanthropist for many years, and has co-founded Board Ready Women and Access Connects, which are not-for-profit organizations in Alberta. Heather is now co-chair of the Calgary Cancer Campaign and has a goal of raising $250 million. And Heather also serves as a board chair of the United Way of Calgary and area, and is a trustee of the Alberta Cancer Foundation. You're also a founder of the C5, which is the Concerned Citizens of Calgary Cancer Centre, and a board chair of the Alliance to End Violence, and a campaign chair of the State Promising Futures campaign. So you're very busy. Heather is also recognized for her leadership and community service, and most recently is a recipient of the 2021 Women's Energy Council Female Executive of the Year Award. Congratulations. And in March of 2019, received the Governors General Sovereign Volunteerism Award for her philanthropy efforts throughout Canada. You've also received numerous other awards, which include the BMO Celebrating Women in 2016 Community and Charitable Giving Award, a State Honorary Bachelor's of Science degree in 2014, the Doc Seaman Generosity of Spirit Award as an individual philanthropist in 2013, and the Alberta Centennial Medal for Community Service in 2005. And in 2003, you were recognized as State's Distinguished Alumni and you also recently completed your ICD certification through Haskayne School of Business at UFC. So welcome, Heather.
Thank you.
And I'd like to introduce you to Jennifer Corey. Jennifer has more than 35 years of professional experience, including C-suite leadership roles and international experience with the world's largest mining company, BHP Billiton, as well as within Enerplus Resources and ExxonMobil. And although Jennifer's core skill is in human resources, she also has extensive business leadership, management, and governance experience working with large global organizations as well as mid-sized and early-stage companies, which has developed her broad range of business acumen skills. Jennifer currently sits as a board of directors for Crescent Point and is chairing their Human Resources Compensation Committee and is a member of the Governance Committee. She's also an advisor to the Bird Construction Board in Toronto and the Calgary Zoo, also again chairing the Human Resources Committee and Women in Mining. She also sits on the Women in Mining Board and is vice chair in Toronto. And from September of 2017 to December of 2019, Jennifer was co-chair for the first public-private partnership with the UN Women Global Innovation Coalition for Change. This is a branch of the United Nations and is based in New York. It is a group of 25 global companies and institutions that are supporting and empowering women and girls in innovation. Jennifer also holds a Bachelor's of Commerce degree with an honors from the University of Alberta and has her director's designation from the Rotman School of Business in Toronto. So welcome. Those are both some very impressive bios. So to begin, maybe, there's so much to talk about just even based on your bios, but maybe we could start with a background and understand where Board Ready Women comes in and how that came to be, and maybe learn a little bit more about yourself. So maybe I'll start with you, Heather.
Sure. Thank you very much. Thanks for having us today. We really appreciate the opportunity to talk about Board Ready Women and some of the reasons why we are here today. I was very fortunate in my career. My background is IT, and so I was in a very male-dominated industry, and of course, being in the energy sector, that also is a very male-dominated sector. So between the two, I basically had a lot of opportunities along the way, and the reason is because there are very few women in IT. And so just to kind of have that as an opportunity was fantastic. My career at Suncor, I worked there for 5 years. It is an amazing organization, and I had a lot of opportunities there as far as kind of learning about the new network. I was around the early 80s, so kind of networks were the first thing, and that was kind of where I kind of grabbed onto that, and that's kind of how I started a consulting firm thereafter. So I had my own consulting firm for quite a few years, IT management consulting, and then I found myself taking on way too many things. And the reason that I wanted to do my own consulting firm is because I had 2 children when I was at Suncor, and I just wanted more flexibility. But of course, what happens is I'm not really good at saying no, and so I ended up with a consulting firm that just grew so quickly and just was so busy and crazy that I decided, well, maybe I need to go back to the workforce and be kind of working for an organization. So one of my clients, Enerplus, hired me as their VP of IT and HR at the time. I had another great opportunities. We did so many mergers and acquisitions over the years, probably $8 billion worth that I was there. And so I really did kind of get into more of the strategic, I guess, systemic kind of mergers and acquisitions from a people side as well as a process side. And so along the way, I was promoted to Senior VP of Corporate Services, which included IT administration and HR. And so, it was just a tremendous opportunity to learn about how to make help acquisitions be more creative relative to the people and processes that come with each one of those acquisitions. And so it allowed me again to expand my career even further, which was amazing. You asked me to share one story, and so I will share that story. The story is when I was at Suncor, and it was like mid-80s, I was really ticked because Petroleum Club did not allow women to join. It was a male-only club, and a lot of decisions and a lot of deals were made, you know, at the Petroleum Club. And I just thought it was unreasonable for us not to have access as women to the Petroleum Club. And so when Suncor went to renew their membership, I started a petition, and it was a very open petition, by the way. I told my boss I was going to do it. And the petition was for Suncor to fight for more women, for women to be able to have access to the Petroleum Club. That petition was signed by over 600 women in the organization. That was presented to the senior executive at Suncor, and they helped to change the rules. And the following year, the rules were changed to allow women in the Petroleum Club. Now, that's a very, you know, the reason I'm sharing that is just to show you, even at a young, you know, as a young person, you can actually make a difference. And this was not confrontational in any way. This was a very much, you know, how do we kind of embrace some of these things that, you know, organizations stand for and actually say they believe in, and make sure that, you know, we are all accountable. So, I mean, I think that was kind of a major accomplishment as a young person. So I couldn't have been more than 30 at the time. So I was 30 years old, and, you know, trying to kind of help move things along a little quicker, which is why we started Board Ready Women. Board Ready Women, after I finished my career, I graduated, and I thought, okay, well, I'm going to go and do some board work. This is super, this is great. I have all this experience, and I'm waiting, and I'm waiting, and I'm waiting, and the phone didn't ring. And I had a tremendous network of male and females in the industry. And when the phone didn't ring, I got super ticked. But I decided, well, I'm just going to go and be on a few not-for-profit boards, you know, get my network out there, try and figure out the best way to kind of get into, you know, other opportunities. I joined some Crown boards, including, you know, the boards that Julia told you about earlier. And then, alas, came a few Crown paid boards, which was great. And then, of course, Whitecap. But along the way, I was just, you know, it took me 10 years to get there. And I'm like, you know, this has got to be easier for women. We have to make this easier for women. So Jen and I and Linda Holhall got together and just thought, how do we make this easier? Well, let's start this not-for-profit called Board Ready Women. We have 4 pillars. It's about connecting women and men, and having quarterly panel discussions and allowing networking. Now, we do not exclude men. And the reason is because they help to open doors. This is a really great opportunity for them to mentor, to show their support, and for women to actually, for them to learn about the amazing women we have in our city. It's also about board development and resources. So we do some board training for women that are, you know, board ready, but perhaps need a little bit more in the way of, you know, some thoughts about some of the development they need. We have board postings, and we really encourage women to put their resumes into their profiles so that we can actually look for skill sets and help create the connection between the postings and appointments to boards. And then, of course, we have mentoring. So those are all the things that Board Ready Women does. You know, it is all about networking, and I'm sure you find that too with GeoWomen, that it's really important to have that networking opportunity. So just one more thing before I let Jen, sorry, Jen, we have over 140 associate members. Oh, and by the way, before we move on from the networking and the panelists, last night we had a panel including your very own Hillary Folks, Martine Ehrman, and Michelle Edkins. So Hillary and Martine being board chairs, and Michelle Edkins as leading the investment, not portfolios, but investment relations for BlackRock. And we spoke about board culture. And that was a real eye-opening, I think, discussion for many people it's just another element of how you can help create healthy boards. So we've had numerous panels like that. We have over 140 associate members, mostly from Alberta. We, just to give you a few statistics on kind of what's going on in Calgary and Alberta right now, we have women only hold 19% of the board positions for corporate boards here in Alberta, here in Calgary. In Alberta, it's 21%. Just to give you a comparison, for example, Toronto is 28.6%. When Jen and I and Linda started Board Ready Women 3.5, 4 years ago, the Calgary corporate was at 13%. So we don't believe that we've had, the whole, I guess, 7% increase hasn't been a direct result of the work that we've done. We think we've definitely made a few percentage improvements there. But I think it's more about creating that awareness that, this is just not acceptable. There has to be more gender diversity and diversity of thought from every aspect, whether it be ethnicity, BIPOC, various, diversity, equity, inclusion. There just has to be more awareness of that. And I think we're starting to create that. And so very exciting time for Calgary, for Board Ready Women, and for women in general in their careers. So thanks for listening. And I'm going to pass it over to Jen.
Well, thanks, Heather, and thanks for asking us here today. Both Heather and I really love doing this with younger, less mature women than us, because we learn a lot too. So thank you for having us. A little bit about my career in a short kind of soundbite. My career was, I carve it up into a third, and a third. The first third I spent after graduating from U of A into Imperial Oil and Exxon, and spent about 15 years there, and rose up to kind of high potential, worked in the Calgary office, worked in the field, worked in Toronto. And the personal story around that I'd share with you is that I had a nanny at home, and I organized my son's 4th birthday party, and I came running in the door, and all the mums were there, and my nanny had organized it all, and my son was there, and we were feeding the kids hot dogs. And I gave my son a hot dog, and he said, "Mommy, I don't like mustard." And I didn't know that. And I was just devastated. Went into our laundry room, bawled my eyes out, told my husband that, you know what, I can't do this. I knew my next job was going to be in Houston with Exxon. And my husband had just been promoted to an executive, and he was looking after a part of the business for IBM in Western Canada. And so I quit. And much like Heather, I opened up a shingle, hung my shingle out, and became a consultant to a variety of companies. So the first third of my career was like an inch wide and a mile deep. And the second third of my career was a mile wide and an inch deep. And it was unbelievable. I worked with small companies, mid-sized companies, even large companies. One of my large accounts was ConocoPhillips, and I went around the world with them working on technical competencies for geoscience, actually. But it really allowed me that flexibility. And because back in the day, when we were your age, they really did not have flexible work schedules like hopefully most companies do now. So did that for 10 years. And similarly, this is going to sound similar to Heather, one of my clients, Enerplus, which was Heather at the time, I worked with for 3 or 4 years, I think, working with their executive team and Heather really on leadership and leadership strategy and tying that to business strategy. And then when Heather retired, or well, actually work graduated, that's the term we use, they asked me to come on and be the VP of HR. So I went back in after 10 years, went back into corporate, and Heather, or Enerplus at the time, was kind of a mid-cap oil and gas, and loved every minute of it. They had a high growth trajectory, and stayed there for 5 years, and then got a call from BHP Billiton in Melbourne, Australia, that they were opening up the potash business in Canada, and wanted to know if I wanted to come and be their Senior VP of Corporate Services. And so went and did that, lived in Saskatoon for a couple of years. We hired an entire executive team in Saskatoon to build 5 different mines there. One of them has just recently been sanctioned, which is great to see, in the potash business. And then they moved me down to Houston, where I spent the next 4.5 years as the Senior VP of Corporate Services for their global petroleum business. And we had onshore, offshore in about 10 different countries. So I got to really see and feel how new country entry and operating in different countries work. I got to go to Melbourne 29 times and present to their board, and it was fantastic. And then I graduated. It'll be 5 years this July. And when I got here, so happy to be back in the same city as Heather. And you know the story on how we started Board Ready Women. And I think both of us are just so proud of that organization, because there wasn't a local network of women that were board ready that could actually support each other in the city of Calgary. And very proud of that. And I guess the only other thing I'd say to all of you folks on the line, because this is about, you know, being on board, is that, you know, my advice to you is that, you know, before you get on a board, any board, I think you should be asking yourself, why? Why do you want to be on a board? Knowing your why is a really important thing, because you will get asked that in interviews. You know, I know some people that want to be on boards because they've left their full-time work like us, and you know, it's just a way to keep in touch and be part of the business that we love. Others want to make money. Others want to join a not-for-profit board because they're passionate about whatever the purpose is of that organization, and they want to give back. So it's not for the faint of heart. I don't want to scare you, but I do want to tell you, I think you really have to consider very carefully why you want to be on a board. And those are my comments for now, and I'll pass it back to you, Julia.
Well, thanks. You know, there's so much in both of your stories and your introductions to comment on and to ask about. I don't think we're going to be able to fill the. I think we need more time, is basically what I think. But you've sort of touched on the why about boards, but why? I'm going to flip it back and ask, like, why should women consider boards, and why should we be looking at them now? And what, and maybe in relationship to, you can comment a little bit about the board stereotype and sort of open that up a little bit and create some transparency and a little bit of information for everybody. So
great. Well, I'll start. Thank you, Julia. Well, why boards, why women, why now? Well, guess what, ladies? Our voice needs to be heard. Diversity of thought needs to be at the table. And not just diversity of thought relative to, you know, the fact that we're women, diversity of thought relative to our perspectives, whether it be technical, whether it be relative to, you know, values, you know, where you've come from, kind of what you're, you know, what you're bringing to the table. So we need those voices at the table. It's extremely, extremely important. And if we want to, you know, kind of allow other women to, or encourage other women to kind of step up and start to create a better pipeline of talent relative to every aspect of, well, let's just talk about the sector, but any business needs more women in decision-making roles. And this is just the natural evolution, because we need to have that representation on boards as well. Better decisions are made. There's actual proof that, profitability increases because you have a more holistic perspective when you're making strategic decisions and when you're looking at various, issues or opportunities. So really, really important that we have more women on boards. As I said, it's kind of pathetic at 19% in Alberta. And a lot of it has to do, and I'm going to be very honest here, a lot of it has to do with the fact that we still do have an old boys club in Calgary. And there are stereotypes associated with that. Things like, first of all, it was, okay, you're going to be the first woman on an all-male board. So it's kind of a little bit of tokenism there can happen. But what I've seen recently is, that's starting to change because, they're getting a lot of pressure from investors and various other stakeholders to say you need to have more diversity of thought on your boards. But typically what we've seen in the past is that boards would appoint female CEOs. Well, guess what? Probably 2% of Alberta there's probably 2% of women CEOs in Alberta. So, okay, so they're on the boards. Okay, well then let's go to CFOs. Okay, well, we have a lot of, CFOs on our Board Ready Women database, for example. They are all on boards, whether they be not-for-profit or for-profit, and they're making their way to the for-profit side. Also, they look for engineers and geoscientists, geophysicists, geologists, because they believe that the stereotype was, well, you understand the business better than, a typical other executive from an organization. And I would say that is true from a technical perspective. But when you're on a board, you're not there to talk about operational aspects. You are there to talk about strategy. You are there to talk about, what are the best things that the organization can focus on in order to make a profit. And I'm not saying that it's an excellent skill to have, because STEM is still one of the top skill sets that women can have, period. So yeah, really, that was kind of where we were going. But now it's even broadening even more, and it's broadening to, because of cybersecurity, for example, more IT, because boards are kind of understanding the importance of the people in their organization, kind of more HR. Compensation, of course, is also a piece of what an HR specialist can bring. So cybersecurity, ESG is another piece that people are looking for. So it is broadening, which is fantastic, because we all have skill sets that we can bring to the table. So I mean, as far as stereotypes, I mean, I think that it did start off rather stereotypical, but now we are broadening, and everybody brings a skill that's depending on the board and depending on the organization, that will be beneficial. But most of the time, the beneficial expertise is your business knowledge. When you're in the C-suite or you're in a senior position, having the experience of the whole gamut of people and projects and executing on all sorts of acquisitions, divestments, successful projects. So anyway, that's kind of my thoughts on that. Jen, do you want to talk about the different types of boards?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Heather. And sometimes people get confused by this. So I don't pretend to know every single textbook definition, but let me give you a sense of the kind of board members that are out there in various institutions. So first of all, independent board members are those that are either appointed or elected to the board by shareholders at the annual general meeting. The non-independents are typically CEOs of the company. Okay, so you're considered independent if you're not part of the organization. So I'll just clear that up. Public boards are registered with the Canadian government, the CRA, the stock exchanges, and a public company sells shares to their shareholders. And because of that, they are accountable to shareholders. And so the board directors that are appointed to those public companies are actually voted in at either at the AGM or sometimes between AGMs, depending on what's happening at around board composition. So if you want to be on a public board, there are a ton of, as many of you will know, disclosure requirements, government requirements, tax requirements, all kinds of things that I'd say public company board directors need to pay attention to. I probably spend, I'm on 2 public boards. There's a quarterly meeting, so 4 times a year, plus ad hoc other meetings. I probably spend upwards of, 500 hours, literally, if not just reading the materials, but I would tell you, you want to stay on trend and you want to read things about what's happening in your sector. So being on a public board is not for the faint of heart. It's a lot of fun and I love it, but it's work. It's a job. Private companies also have boards typically, but they have much less disclosure requirements, so they can do a lot of different things that public companies cannot, and they're typically owned by large investors or family members, those kinds of things. And you've heard of private equity owning companies. That's private companies. Getting on those boards typically is, the founders or people that are already on those boards. I'm not saying it's difficult, but it's not as open because they don't typically, get search firms, by the way, to go and recruit new directors. And then we have not-for-profits. Actually, before I do not-for-profits, let me talk about crown corporations. So crown corporations are those, obviously, that are owned by the government, whether it's municipal or provincial or federal. And those organizations typically they can recruit in a variety of different ways. But I would tell you, crown corporations are a lot of fun if you want to really see how the government works and if you're passionate about some of the purpose and vision for those crowns. One example of that is ATB in Alberta, and I know people that have been on that board and they've just loved it. And Heather, as you saw in her bio, is on Export Development Canada, and they're a lot of fun. Last are not-for-profits, and it's just that. They are organizations that form around a particular purpose in the community, and most of them have board members. In fact, all of them typically do. And the only thing I want to say about not-for-profits is that, number one, you should think about not-for-profits that you're passionate about. Like I said, I'm on the Calgary Zoo board, and I just absolutely love that board because it's run like a proper public company governance board. We have committees. We talk about the right things. It's not a fundraising board or it's not a marketing board. A lot of not-for-profits, though, do hire or want directors on their board that are actually going to roll up their sleeves and dive in and do work. And it is work. I know church organizations have them. There's a gazillion of them. There's lots of agencies that have them, etc. So my advice and counsel to you about not-for-profits is, number one, make sure that you're passionate about it. Check them out. If you know anybody on the board or know anybody that knows anything about those organizations, find out whether it's a governance board or whether it's a working board, because that can be that can be a lot of work because they want you to do a particular thing because they don't have maybe the skill set or the network existing in the organization. So I just wanted to, I think I'll end there.
Awesome. Oh, that was a lot of information and a lot of really good background on why we should be, as women, considering boards. Heather, thank you for that, and that really great explanation on the various roles within a board from you, Jennifer. So I think now that we've touched a lot on the background of boards, and maybe I'd like to shift a little bit and focus a little bit more specific towards the audience, and maybe touching on, maybe you can provide some advice or some guidance on how people earlier on in their career, mid-20s, mid-30s into early 40s, might consider and like some of the steps they should start to take if they are thinking about boards, and also I guess from a STEM or from a science perspective or an engineering perspective, like what are some of the skill sets that we can maybe draw from and maybe highlight that aren't then specific to either legal or HR, and that maybe aren't industry specific, so that we can maybe give a little bit of a broader perspective on the skill sets that somebody in geoscience, for example, can maybe bring to a board. So I'll let maybe I'll start
Jen
with you.
going to take this one. Go ahead.
Yes, Jennifer, can you maybe comment on that? Oh, I think you're still on mute. Oh, Heather, do you want to maybe, are you still on mute? Or, oh, there you are. Okay, good.
Yeah. So starting your board journey is an interesting one. I think that, again, you want to think about why you want to be on a board. That's the first step. And what kind of experience you're looking for. I think that the first logical place for you to look, frankly, is a not-for-profit, because given your work experience and your history, there's probably not a lot of publicly traded organizations or private companies that are going to be looking for someone with probably less than about 10, 20 years, 25 years experience. And they are typically looking for something or someone that has that executive experience and has led larger parts of organizations at a senior level. So I would say a not-for-profit for sure would be one of them. I think one of the biggest ones is the second thing to do is target those that you're interested in. And when I say target, I really do mean target. Look at their website, look at who's on the board, look at LinkedIn, see if there's any mutual connections that you have, talk to people that have a mutual connection with someone that knows that organization, find out about it, find out if they would be interested. I in the past, Heather said she took her 10 years and it took me 5 for sure, is that, networking is huge, so do your homework, find out what the organization is, target them, find people that know them. And frankly, the other thing I'd say is join Board Ready Women. And I'm not just saying this as a marketing pitch, but the reason I say that to all of you in the audience that are, less mature than I am and Heather, is that the women we have at our events are super connected typically to a variety of industries in Calgary and in Alberta and in fact in Canada. So, networking at those events and getting to know them, telling them you're interested in being on a board and forming those relationships is, I can't say enough about that. In terms of the skill sets, I would tell you that you know, one of the things that a board is always going to be looking for is, does the person think at a broader level beyond their discipline? And I call that kind of strategy and leadership around that. Now, you may not have had a formal leadership position, but if you've been involved in developing strategies around processes or practices or projects inside your organizations, you can highlight that in your CV. Because when you get on a board, although you might be hired for your discipline, you're not there because you're expected to contribute at all on all the issues that are brought to the board, not just around your discipline. So if you are highly technical, you know, understand how you can improve your business acumen. Can you read a balance sheet? Do you understand income statements? Do you know what NPV is? Do you know how projects are managed? So the financial acumen is big. People management is big. Risk management is huge. And I'm going to assume that in your discipline in geoscience, you guys all understand risk, and whether it's a P60 or a P10 around some of the things that you're doing. So, you know, those kinds of skills are what is going to be, if you have those in your toolkit, or at least some of them, you know, that is going to make you marketable to boards. Now, what have I missed, Julia? Was there another question in there?
No, I think you've touched on all of that. And I think maybe for Heather, you were going to comment a little bit about some of the opportunities, and maybe with Board Ready Women, and just kind of maybe talking a little bit about, maybe you can actually touch on some of the various board postings and opportunities that come across your organization.
Yeah, well, interesting enough, we've had probably close to, since the beginning of this year, we've had 37 board postings for over 62 board positions across Canada. And since January, we've assisted 25 companies with 58 board positions across Canada. Not all positions are posted on the website because some are confidential, confidential postings. But we have put forward 192 women for these positions or names. So, back and forth. So if we've posted, we're promoting 37 board postings, there could be a few women that were eligible for more than one, for example. And we always make sure that we contact the selected candidates before we put their name forward to make sure that they are available or interested. So, but I totally agree with Jen. I think some of the best ways to get started is by targeting at number one, a not-for-profit that you are passionate about, something that you are, have a lot of interest in, and perhaps even a little bit of experience in that you can relate to. And so, we have that is really, starting with the not-for-profits, it is the best way, and also then gives you the additional experience that you need as far as governance, because it's one thing to go and take a governance course, and I do suggest that if you are going to go on a not-for-profit board, go and take the not-for-profit governance with ICD. It's amazing. It gives you the full spectrum of governance considerations, as Jen said, whether it be, just general governance rules, but then also kind of what are some of the things that you need to consider when you consider strategy? What about risk? What about financials? How do you, when you're in a difficult situation on a board, how do you deal with it? Because it's going to happen. Believe me, I've never been on a board yet. And I just counted this morning, and I've been on 16 boards where there hasn't been something that has come up that has been unexpected. And so a lot of it is, you can get training, but you have to experience it as well. And it's better to experience it with a not-for-profit than when you're very liable on a on a for-profit board. Okay, so also understand the other thing about the not-for-profit board governance is understanding liability and potentially how it could affect, you personally. which is why it's so important to do due diligence prior to joining any board. Understand their financials, understand, what kind of board is it? Is it a working board? Because there are a lot of not-for-profits that are working boards, which means that they expect everyone to roll up their sleeves and do various things along the way, right? Whether it be, helping to raise money. And I think that that's an expectation of every not-for-profit board member is helping to raise money. But also, are you going to bring some HR expertise to the board and head up their HR committee? Are you going to bring, financial expertise? Are you going to bring, general understanding of, what kinds of things that you want to, what are your strategic priorities, etc. So, I mean, I just wanted to just kind of expand a little bit on the way to position yourself for boards, and then ultimately take the ICD course. I mean, it's ridiculously expensive, but I think more and more boards now are going to be, and not for profits will not be searching for that, but when you are ready to go on a for-profit board, there are more and more organizations that are looking for that certification, just to make sure that you understand what proper governance looks like. So did I answer the question, Julia?
Yes, you did. And, I did want to comment too on joining Board Ready Women. I joined Board Ready Women last year, and it's been a phenomenal experience. I mean, the mentoring that I got was amazing. I got paired up with Elizabeth Cannon, who, when I saw her name, I thought I was the luckiest person to be paired up with her. But she really, gave some really good advice and was able to provide some feedback on my resume. And through that, I actually did get a board position with Calgary Minor Soccer. And I didn't think I was going to be able to do that in a very short amount of time. So yeah, Board Ready Women really does set you up for a really good, successful board journey. And I'm really enjoying my position on that.
Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you. Okay, so I think I wanted to maybe just take a moment to summarize some of the things that you have said, because there's been so much great advice, and I've sort of broken it out into two different groups. And then I thought maybe we could open it up. We have about 10 minutes left. If we could open it up to some questions, if anybody has any. So maybe start thinking about some of the questions that you might have to ask either Jennifer or Heather. But so the two groups I saw was, first of all, was more on a personal basis, and it's Jennifer, you had said know your why and really understand why you'd want to be on a board, and then when you do that, start to really do your homework. So these are the action items, right? So know your why, take a little bit of self-reflection and look into yourself, do your homework, and join Ready Women. So those are some action items I heard you guys say, or ladies, sorry. And then in order to position yourself, the first step would be to target a not-for-profit and to do a lot of that networking as well. And from a skill perspective, maybe look into how strategy, vision, and processes sort of align with a board, and how you can bring that skill set to a board. And then if you're really keen on taking that step, that's one step further, to take that governance course. So yeah, thank you so much. That's some really great advice. And I'm just wondering.
Sorry, Julia, one other thing I wanted to maybe clear up is a bit of a myth. Heather mentioned ICD, and I couldn't agree with her more about if you want to be on if you're ready to do some bigger boards or even bigger not-for-profits, you take the formal programs. But here's the myth: anybody can join ICD. You can become a member of the ICD tomorrow, and you don't have to take all of their programs. You become a member, and you can go to their webinars, you can go to their events, you can meet people in Calgary. There's a strong Calgary chapter. They have in-person events and all kinds. So you don't have to join and then take the director's formal program. And I don't know how that's missed, but a lot of people think that that's what but anybody can be a member. Just want to throw that out there.
Oh, that's great. I mean, it's another networking opportunity, and that was, I think, Another thing I wanted to summarize for everybody is that the networking is huge in moving yourself forward. So I'm just going to see if there's any questions from the audience. If not, I do have one more I wanted to ask you both, and there are none from the audience yet. So if you're in the audience, you're listening, we have about 10 minutes. So if you have a question, do please write it in. And so the question I had for both of you was maybe if you could highlight one of your biggest wins and one of your biggest challenges that you've experienced in your career. So I will, maybe we'll start with you, Jennifer.
Sure. You know, these are tough. Because, you know, you start thinking about the whole list of challenges. It's harder for women to start thinking about their wins. Isn't that funny? That's a typical female thing in my view. I would say couple biggest wins for me is I never really thought I wanted to get to a senior executive position in a company. Like, I didn't start there. I started with just, you know, head down, do good work and love your job. So I think one of the wins for me is actually being able to have worked in executive roles in a couple of different companies, one kind of a mid-cap and one larger. But I did that when the time was right for me and my family, which I'm actually quite proud of. Taking that 10 years off to consult allowed me to really be at home with my 3 children. The second biggest win, and it's also my biggest challenge, I would tell you, is always struggling, constantly struggling to maintain work-life balance. And I call it a win because I guess after my 3rd child, I started realizing that, you know, work-life balance is actually elusive and it's a bit of a myth. For me, anyway, I like to think about when I was working, my life is fluid. Sometimes my work runs into my life and sometimes my life runs into my work, but accepting that it's not going to be perfect. And my story, you know, now I have adult children and I've asked them the question, do you think you suffered because I was a working mom? And, you know, all of them said, absolutely not, Mom. You know, it gave us a role model for women, and you did your very best and we had a great childhood. So that's a win for me. My biggest challenge is that working with men my entire life, Heather said it earlier, in all the sectors that I've been in, both in oil and gas and mining, very few female role models. However, you know, I have to say that I'm still in touch with kind of the top 5 male mentors in my life. And I would tell you that it's so important to have male mentors in a male sector because they were invaluable to me and they became my allies. So not all of them are male, pale, and stale. Some are really good guys and have a lot to offer. So, you know, I'd leave that with you and say, you know, find them in your organization. Heather?
Yeah, I'll just go quickly. I mean, basically, the work-life balance has always been my challenge, but just the same as Jen, our kids are so independent and are doing so well. And even though, you know, there are times that it was very, very difficult, they actually, they know that they benefited from having, you know, that independence, which has given them the opportunity as well. So, I mean, I know I was as good of a mom as I could be, just given the fact that I was an executive as well, but finding that it's elusive, finding that work-life balance. But my one win that I just want to share is, you know, when you find a passion that you really have and you join a not-for-profit board and you can make a difference in the community, to me, that's been my biggest wins, honestly. You know, kids for sure, but making a difference in the community has been huge for me. And I really like to believe that that cancer center that's being built right now would not have been built had I not taken a really strong role in making sure that that cancer center was built. So find something that you're passionate about and you can turn it into a win. Like, there's so many opportunities out there. Thank you.
Yeah, those are great. So we do have one question that I can see, and well, there's several, but this one might be a good one, and it's what do you say to the comment, and it's in quotations, there are not enough women ready, experienced enough for board positions within oil and gas, end of quotation marks. Is this simply false? And or do you draw from other industries for positions within oil and gas or boards?
Well, I'm just going to, and I'll 1 minute, not even 30 seconds. My answer to that is that it's completely false. It's BS, in fact, because there are a ton of women in our sector that are ready, willing, and able to be on boards. Heather?
No, it is complete garbage. And we have so many, and that was kind of one of the reasons we started Board Ready Women, is for people to be aware of the fact that we do have a lot of talent and that we can absolutely fill these board roles. But no, you don't have to be in the oil and gas sector in order to have a position on an oil and gas board. So take, for example, CNRL has put Elizabeth Cannon on their board. And Elizabeth Cannon, as you know, is an academic, brilliant scientist, lots of STEM experience, lots of great experience, just kind of understanding the world of, how to, bring various parties together and collaborate and things like that. And so there's some great skill sets that people to bring to the table that aren't in oil and gas. So yeah, just keep that in mind. It doesn't have, whatever skills you're bringing to the table, it doesn't have to be oil and gas, but I know most of you are in oil and gas, so there you go.
Perfect. I think we have time for one more question with the sort of 2 minutes to go. This one is, I'm 3 years post-graduation from university and I'm thinking about board work and that it would be a good way to strengthen my current skills. Am I correct?
Yeah.
Yes.
Short and sweet, yes.
You can start now. I mean, if you have the ability, I mean, and that's the other thing is people that are high performing have a hard time saying no. They really do. And when you have kids and you have a career that's very demanding, pardon me, you're going to know the right time to seek that board, but don't push yourself to the point where you can't do anything well, right? Jen?
Yeah, well, Heather and I have been coaching each other on that for our entire careers and friendships of 25 years. Saying yes too many times when you should have said no. But if absolutely, you can start at any age.
Great. Well, you answered those very quickly, so I'm going to ask one more final question. It says, hello, I just joined Board Ready Women and I'm looking forward to learning more about women on boards. Jennifer and Heather mentioned that understanding risk and STEM backgrounds are big for sitting on boards. My background is actuarial science. It is usually recognized as knowing risk. Is that usually recognized as knowing risk in a STEM area?
Yeah, no question. Actuarial, yes, absolutely. It is, risk management is actually one of the biggest, I mean, it's been amazing because honestly, risk management, it's not only in your best interest to understand risk management because then you will understand liability, but also, understanding risk management from a corporate perspective, just to make sure that you're balancing risk and what your risk appetite is. So actuarial skills, my God, yes, absolutely. People look for those for sure. Jen?
Yeah, I mean, any kind of actuary, finance, all of that will serve you well, and make sure you put it on your resume for sure. Great.
Okay. Thank you. I don't see any more questions coming in, and we are at 1 o'clock, so I think this is a really great place to stop. So I just wanted to say thank you so much again for joining us today and really taking the time to give us all the advice and all the background. And hopefully there are a few nuggets out there for the people in the audience on why you should consider joining boards, why you should join Board Ready Women, and some of the other, stepping stones that you can take to start to think about your board career journey. So thank you so much. This has been really great.
Thank you very much, Julia. I really appreciate it. Amazing organization. Again, this collaboration with women is extremely important for the network that you need to establish. Also join Access Connects, and I know that many of you went to the Calgary Influential Women in Business Awards, where we profile women that are doing fantastic things in our city. But Access Connects is another great networking opportunity, and I know GeoWomen is part of Access Connects. So it just allows us all to collaborate, interact, make sure that we are, creating that pipeline of talent from every aspect of Calgary business and Calgary organizations. So Access Connects, and network, and be the courage of your convictions. Like, honestly, be true to yourself. So those would be my parting remarks. Jen, did you want to say anything?
No, it's been a pleasure. Always happy to interact with folks like your organization. So thank you so much.
No, thank you. And I wanted to give a shout out to Mandy and Jocelyn for bringing GeoWomen together and really providing this space for all of us to learn from each other. So thank you very much.
And thank you, Julia. Really appreciate it.
Have a good day.
Have a wonderful day, everyone. Good luck with everything.
Thanks. You too. Have a great day, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.